Good evening, and thank you for joining me for this series of talks called Let Jesus. My name is Will Pareja, and I'm the pastor of Addison Street Community Church here on the north side of Chicago. I'm putting together a series of talks not for our church people, not for people who consider themselves to be religious or biblically literate. I am creating this series of talks for my friends, my neighbors, or family, your family, friends, and neighbors that might be skeptical of religion, that might be interested, seeking. The series of talks is for the irreligious. Maybe you consider yourself to be one of the nones demographically. Maybe you consider yourself to be secular. If you're an agnostic, you believe that there is a God, but you're not sure that you can know him. This series of talks is for you. I do not at all pretend to impose or show you something that communicates that I or any church is better than you are. I am humbly a sinner saved by God's grace, and I want to share with you some things about Jesus Christ that I think you ought to know. So this is for you. And thank you once again for landing on this page and clicking on the link and giving this a listen. I'm not as much interested in you listening to me as a personality, as a talking head. Really, my goal is that I want you to know who Jesus Christ is. Jesus gets flouted on the front pages of magazines maybe once a year, whether pro-Jesus or questioning Jesus. And I'm one of many voices that you can probably find on YouTube or anywhere dealing with this one. I'm assuming mainly the context of my neighborhood, my north side neighborhood here in Chicago, and the people that live around me. I'm really hoping that you just don't see me on a video behind a camera, but that maybe you see me on the street and that we can talk sometime. The goal of these videos is not necessarily to get more likes, to create a following for our church or for me. Really, the goal is to create a following for Jesus Christ. People have been doing this for over 2,000 years, not making YouTube videos, obviously, but trying to spread the clear message of who he is and what he has done. The approach that I'm going to be using every single week, in fact, I probably won't be the only one giving these talks, but I'll probably be including other people here to help clarify more about this Jesus. But the approach will be simple and pretty consistent week after week when you tune in here either to Facebook or to YouTube. What we will do is I will start with the Bible, which is the book of the Christian faith, and we will take a portion of it that speaks to Jesus. My personal conviction or belief is that the whole Bible is about Jesus, but we have to understand how it kind of works. So I want to introduce you to Jesus using the words of Jesus and his followers who wrote the Bible. Now I know even that word Bible might be fraught with a lot of baggage and assumptions for you. And I know for a fact that I cannot possibly, in a monologue like this, get rid of or answer every single objection that there is to the Bible, to Christianity, to Jesus. I'm trying to create a conversation. But I just want to let you know my MO. So I'll use a Bible every week. And if you'd like to use one, I'd encourage you to do that. If you don't have one in your home, feel free to download one. There are several good English, what we call versions of the Bible, like the New International Version, NIV. There's the ESV, the English Standard Version. There's the New Living Translation, which is closer to a paraphrase, but really good for everyday English. And today I'm actually using what we call the Christian Standard Bible. Almost any of these are downloadable. If you'd like a copy, and if you live near my church, come and ask for one. We will give you one. One way to follow along is to go in the table of contents at the beginning of the Bible, and you'll find all these books of the Bible. The Bible's split into two sections, the Old Testament and the New Testament. The Old is a little bit longer, and it may have a reputation of being really archaic and fraught with a bunch of problems, and maybe you've heard that the New Testament is the place to be. And indeed, that's where we're actually going to be today. I believe in both testaments. But you can go to a table of contents and hear what the book is, the book within the book. You can go to a page number, and every book has chapters, almost every book. And within those chapters, there are verses. They're smaller numbers. And I'm going to be referring to books, chapters, and numbers. Hopefully not to lose you, but to show you where you can find the answers that I'm getting and the explanations. I always want to take you back to the source of where I'm getting the information from my talks. And finally, by way of introductory comments, please feel free to email us here at Addison Street Community Church. We do have a website, www.asccchicago.org, but we have a special email for these talks so we can kind of know how people are absorbing and interacting with us. Write us at Why Jesus Matters. Why Jesus Matters, altogether, at asccchicago.org. We will look forward to hearing from you, to answering you, and whenever the shelter in place is lifted, maybe even grabbing a meal or a cup of coffee together with you, but don't want to scare you away too soon. When I was in college, there was one professor whose classes would fill up within minutes. This was before the days of electronic enrollment and signing up for classes. We had to do it physically with paper, and I suppose that dates me a little bit. But this professor, we all would try to get in his class. We would line up early to get in, and it would close within minutes. You could miss his classes by just a few minutes. He had a great reputation. How we choose to commit to places, to people, to ideas, to vacation spots, to a presidential candidate, maybe to a game. Sometimes I don't care who's going to be playing the Chicago Cubs or the White Sox. I'm more interested in the star on the team that's coming. We make commitments based on a reputation. And oftentimes our experiences of a person or a product are lackluster because they've been based on somebody else's experience or somebody else's testimony. Sometimes there's hype, and the hype is spot on. But sometimes the hype is very hypocritical. And I know that by you being on this website today, listening to this talk, that you are taking a chance on whether or not you're going to listen. Maybe you've come to this website today to listen to this talk already with notions and ideas and opinions about religion, about church, about authority, about holy books, about religious people, or even pastors. And I'm asking you today to give Jesus a shot, and more than that. But I understand that I'm asking a risky thing. My approach today in asking you to listen to a series of talks like this is kind of like asking you to go on a blind date with someone that you've only trolled on Instagram or heard rumors about. So I'm grateful that you would give this a hearing. I'm going to be talking to you today from the book of Hebrews in the New Testament. Because the title of my talk today that I want to give to you in this series that we've called Let Jesus, the first in this series is let Jesus speak. Let Jesus speak. That's the one thing I want you to take away, and I'm going to show you from the Bible where we get this. It's in Hebrews, in the New Testament, chapter 1, in the first few verses. The Bible says this: "Long ago God spoke to the fathers by the prophets at different times and in different ways. In these last days he has spoken to us by his Son. God appointed him heir to all things, and made the universe through him. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact expression of his nature, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After making purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high." This passage from the Bible assumes something here today before I can even begin speaking. Because if you've been listening, an assumption has already been made. An assumption has been asserted. And the assumption is this: God. It says, long ago, God. And 3 times in this portion of this book, of this text that we're in, it talks about G-O-D, God. What to you is maybe a higher power, a divine being, a manifestation of anything and everything. Obviously, you have a view of God or an understanding of God. You might not be as well served or interested in talks like this because of the assumption that there is even a God. But I'm working from the authoritative text of the Holy Bible, where it says that long ago, God. It not only assumes that God is, it assumes that God speaks. God speaks. Long ago, God spoke. There's several things I want to throw at you today about God, and then a few things that I want to throw at you about Jesus. The first thing that we see here about God is that God speaks through his Son. God speaks through his Son. It says here, long ago, God spoke to the fathers by the prophets at different times and in different ways. Okay, what this is communicating is that there was an ancient mode of communication, divine communication, from heaven, in a sense, to earth. In the ancient days, long ago, it was through prophets at different times and in different ways, in different epochs of history, as well as in different forms. Sometimes this happened by way of dreams or visions. There's even one story in the Old Testament about God speaking directly through a donkey. I mean, you might not necessarily believe that, but I'm not asking you to believe that. What I'm asking you is, can you hang with the assumption and the assertion that the Bible makes in the fact that God exists? That God exists and that God speaks. Because it says here that long ago God spoke to our fathers. This is in a Jewish context. And now God speaks. In these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son. What is happening here is that there is a connection being made between the past and the present. What's happened in the past has a bearing in the present. In other words, there's a continuity of past communication that culminates in one person, in one superior person. This is how God used to speak. Now, in these last days, God has spoken. Now, for us who read the Bible in the year 2020, we think it's all ancient. When this was written, it was written in the 1st century after Jesus Christ had died. In that calendar. So even to us, this would seem old. But when it was being written, it was reflecting on the past. And the author is saying is that God spoke in this way through these kind of people in these ways and at these times, and now in these last days he's speaking to us through his Son. He's not even said his name yet, and that name comes a little bit later in the book of Hebrews. It is Jesus. God speaks to us through his Son, assuming that this is God the Father. So the assumption now, the connection that we need to make to 2020 is, what good is an ancient book like the Bible? What good is it for us today? And while I cannot get into all of those things today, I'm asking you simply to consider, is there God? And if he is, does he speak? And if he does speak, and if he does communicate, how does he do it? And then, naturally, why should we even listen? It moves on. It says in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son. And it says here, God has appointed him the heir of all things. God has entitled or entrusted all things to his Son, Jesus. Jesus inherits everything that God gives him. But it's just not a blind connection. There is a connection in the inheritance. It says here that it was through him that the universe was made. So, this God has a Son, Jesus, the eternal Son of God. Again, we're talking about assumed categories in the whole of the Bible. Is God gives to his Son everything. But the Son also had a part in making everything. In other words, Jesus, God's Son, inherits what he himself has made. What I'm trying to ask you to do here is to let Jesus speak. Would you give him a listen? Jesus Christ helped create the world. The universe was made through him. Now, I understand you might have a problem with any kind of creation that is mediated or creationism. I understand that could be your skepticism. But we all have to admit that something doesn't come from nothing. Everything that there is comes from something. The assumption here in the text, once again, is that God creates. God is, God creates, and God communicates. And it says here in the 3rd verse of this portion of Scripture that the Son, this is Jesus, is the radiance of God's glory and the exact expression of his nature. So in other words, God speaks through his Son, God entitles or entrusts all things to his Son, God creates the universe through his Son, and God radiates through his Son. This Son, whose name is Jesus, was born into this world with the Hebrew name in the Hebrew town of Bethlehem. He is very much a man. He is what Christianity calls the God-man. Completely different, yet like us. But the point of this text is to say, Jesus Christ is very much like the one who sent him. In other words, Jesus Christ is God. He radiates the very being of God. And that's what it keeps on saying here, that he is the exact expression of his nature. Sometimes you've heard the phrase, well, he's a chip off the old block, meaning he's very much like his dad. He looks like him, he acts like him, his manners are like him. And in a sense, this is true about Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is perfect. Jesus Christ is holy. All these things about God that is true of God are true of Jesus Christ. In fact, this term for impression or exact imprint is a word where we get our English word character from. What is character other than something that is forged, something that is cut out, that is set, that is molded? And it says here, the Son sustains all things. That which the Son owns, which he was responsible for creating, it says there that he sustains all things by his powerful word. Do you ever wonder how it is day to day? We wake up, the sun rises, we go through our day, the sun goes down, and everything that's happening in this world, how we go about it every single day. Because God is holding it up. Something is holding it up. We say, well, it's the laws of nature that keep happening, that gravity and all these laws of the universe are keeping us together. And indeed, there are those laws. But where did those laws come from? Where does gravity come from? How is it that Earth doesn't spin out of orbit? The big answer, the macro answer to this is that Jesus Christ, God's Son, holds it all up. And he does it by a word. Nothing happens except by his word. Then it says here, the next thing that we learn about Jesus the Son and why you should listen to him, why you should let him speak, is that the Son made a sacrifice for sins. It says, after making purification for sins. The book of Hebrews in the New Testament is a very Jewish book. It connects very much with the book of Leviticus in the Old Testament. And this book is about to unfold and unpack the Jewishness, in a sense, of religion, of the day, of that religion, and Jesus Christ. And it's about to paint Jesus Christ as superior to everything about that religion. And it says that Jesus made purification for sins. And every one of those words is packed with meaning. Basically, this means is that Jesus the Son made a sacrifice for sins. There's a whole elaborate system of religious and civic and moral laws that often get taken out of context when people who aren't familiar with the Bible read it and say, what kind of God could that be? That's an old, antiquated, oppressive God. So hang with me here. I'm not asking you to buy the whole bit. What I'm asking you to do is to listen to the fact that this man, this Jesus, the God-man, made purification for sins. That means that Jesus came and he lived a life that we should have lived, that every Jewish person should have lived back then. And then he died a death that he didn't deserve. He got treated like a criminal. He was crucified on a Roman cross between two criminals. This was standard fare in punishing lawbreakers of the day. But Jesus, in a sense, got the raw end of the deal. But in this kind of injustice, Jesus did something that was eternally significant. And that was fulfilling. Now you say there's nothing fulfilling about dying, much less being slaughtered and tortured on in Roman execution. No. The fulfillment came in what he did towards God. What Jesus did on hanging on a tree was not the same as what any religious martyr did. It's not Mother Teresa. It's not Gandhi. It's nothing like what anyone else has done in the name of religion. So if you were trying to equate Jesus and religion, then I'm asking you to put a pause on your assumptions here. What Jesus Christ did was he took care of the worst problem of all. It says here that he made purification for sins, which assumes something else, that there's a problem that needs repair. It wasn't health, it wasn't education, it wasn't a system of government or other injustices that needed to be taken care of. It goes much deeper than that. Jesus Christ, this radiance and expression and very God himself, God, died like a criminal to satisfy the demands of holy God in heaven for sin. And sin isn't just something that's out there. Sin is born in every single one of us. Every person is a sinner. So this Son dies for sin. And then after, he sat down on the right hand of the Majesty on high. And that concludes our text. Last week, Christians all over the world celebrated Easter. Granted, we were all holed up inside of our house, getting together on Zoom calls and such, but we still observed Easter. And the fact of the matter is the Christian faith is built on these two massive works of Jesus Christ. Good Friday and Easter Sunday, the Resurrection Sunday. And Jesus Christ rose from the dead, physically, bodily. He hung around for 40 days so that people could see him, so that he would have witnesses, and then he ascended back up to heaven and sat down at the right hand of God. His work is done. Having finished the work, Jesus Christ the Son is exalted into heaven. This is a brief introduction into the person of Jesus. I'm asking you to let Jesus speak today without knowing fully well who he might be. I'm not asking you to give religion a chance. That's why I said religion is not what we're here for. I'm asking you here today, I'm asking you to challenge your assumptions. Instead of assuming that religion is fine so long as it stays private, that my Christian neighbors don't bother me with it, I'm asking you to question yourself as to whether you actually may have been ignoring or missing reality completely. Instead of feeling sorry for the Christians, instead of feeling sorry for the people who go to church and hold these beliefs deeply and hoping that they don't impose them on you, maybe like through YouTube videos, I'm asking you to say, well, maybe I don't know completely who Jesus is. Maybe I should listen. Maybe I should let Jesus speak. Thank you for listening this evening. If you were at all moved or challenged by this talk, maybe you were maddened, I ask you today to consider trusting Jesus for your life. You can pray. You can pray along these lines. You could pray, Dear God, I want to know you, and I'm not sure how to know you. You can say something like, I've been speaking about Jesus the wrong way or assuming the wrong things, and maybe I'm wrong. Dear God, show me where I'm wrong. And if you're right, open yourself up to me and help me to see who Jesus really is. Something like that you can pray. You can also request prayer from us. Once again, our email address is whyjesusmatters@asccchicago.org. Thank you again for listening, dear friends. And if it's been at all helpful, please let some of your other friends know. We'll be back here on Facebook Live and YouTube at our Addison Street Community Church YouTube channel at 5 p.m. Central Time next week. God bless you.